The great crystal hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with voices from across the galaxy. Hundreds of beings filled the massive chamber, their forms as different as the stars they came from. Some walked on two legs, others floated in the air, and a few moved with mechanical precision on metal limbs. Kim Dae-ho sat in the human section, his weathered hands folded on the smooth table before him. At 67 years old, he had served as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for nearly 2 decades. He had seen countless debates, voted on thousands of issues, and helped solve problems that affected billions of lives across dozens of worlds. Next to him sat Admiral Park Ji-woo, a stern man whose gray uniform carried ribbons from 40 different campaigns. The Admiral's sharp eyes constantly scanned the room, a habit from years of military service. On Kim's other side, Chief Science Officer Lee So-min reviewed data on her tablet, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. Young Choi Bin, Kim's aide, shifted nervously in his chair. This was only his 3rd council session, and the massive hall still amazed him. Representatives from the proud Keth warrior clan sat near the peaceful Meridian delegates. The insectoid hive worlds had sent their largest delegation in years, while the mysterious Zephyrians kept to their usual corner. "The session will now come to order," announced the council speaker, a tall being whose voice echoed through translation devices. "Today we address Motion 847 Delta, presented by the Zephyrian delegation." Veltar of the Zephyrian world stood slowly. His pale blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber's lights as he activated the central display. Kim had known Veltar for 15 years. They had worked together on trade agreements and peace treaties. They had even shared meals during long negotiations. "Honored delegates," Veltar began, his voice carrying the formal tone of official business. "Today we address a growing concern that affects the stability of our entire galaxy." The display showed star maps with human colonies marked in red. Kim frowned. Those colonies had been established at the Council's request, placed in dangerous border regions to protect trade routes and provide early warning against pirate attacks. Shun 847 Delta calls for the restriction of human military capabilities and mandatory resource redistribution, Veltar continued. "We propose that humanity surrender 60% of their fleet to Council control, relocate populations from 12 specified colony worlds, and submit all major decisions to Council guidance protocols." The words hit Kim like a physical blow. Around him he heard Admiral Park's sharp intake of breath, and Lee So-min's tablet clatter to the table. Young Choi Bin sat frozen, his mouth slightly open. The chamber erupted in whispers and clicking sounds as various species discussed the motion in their native languages. Kim's translation device struggled to keep up with the flood of conversations. "The human expansion has become concerning," said Councillor Ixthek of the Hive Worlds, rising to speak. "Their colonies spread faster than any other species. Their military grows stronger each year. This represents a threat to galactic balance." Admiral Park leaned toward Kim. "Sir, those colonies exist because the Council asked us to build them. Every single one was placed to defend other species' trade routes." Kim nodded but said nothing. He watched as delegate after delegate rose to speak in favor of the motion. The Talar Confederacy worried about human influence in their sector. The Outer Rim Coalition claimed humans took too many resources. Even species that humanity had saved from pirate attacks now spoke against them. 300 years, Kim whispered to himself. 300 years of service. He remembered the history that apparently no one else wanted to recall. When the Vegan pirates had threatened to destroy 3 billion lives, human fleets had fought for 2 years to stop them. When the stellar plague had swept through 17 worlds, human doctors had worked until they dropped, many dying to find a cure. When the Great Famine had struck 40 planets, human agricultural ships had fed the hungry, while Earth's own people went on short rations. "The humans claim to be peaceful," said Morix of the Trade Federation, "but they build weapons that surpass our own. They explore sectors we have not even mapped. How can we trust such rapid expansion?" Lee So-min grabbed Kim's arm. "Sir, should I present our research data? We were going to share the new propulsion technology next week, and the medical advances we've developed could help dozens of species." "Not yet," Kim replied quietly. "Let's see how this plays out." The debate continued for hours. Some delegates spoke of human aggression, pointing to their strong military. Others worried about economic competition from human colonies. A few mentioned humanity's rapid technological development as a threat to established order. Only 2 species spoke in humanity's defense. Elder Kethver of the warrior clan stood with dignity. "The humans have honor," he said in his deep voice. "They fight beside us when called. They keep their word when given. This motion dishonors the council." Ambassador Lyrian of the Peaceful Meridians also rose. "In our long history, we have learned to recognize those who build and those who destroy. Humans are builders. This motion is wrong." But their voices were lost in the tide of fear and jealousy that had been building for years. Kim realized that this moment had been planned long in advance. Too many delegates spoke with prepared statements. Too many concerns sounded rehearsed. "The vote will now be taken," announced the council speaker. Kim watched the display as votes appeared one by one. Green for approval, red for opposition, yellow for abstention. The green lights multiplied quickly, far outnumbering the red ones. Final count: 847 votes in favor, 23 opposed, 156 abstentions. The chamber fell silent. Kim felt the weight of 3 centuries of human sacrifice, dedication, and loyalty crashing down around him. Every human colony built to protect others. Every human ship lost defending council worlds. Every human life spent in service to the galaxy's peace. He stood slowly, his legs feeling older than his years. The entire chamber watched as Earth's ambassador rose to his full height. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the vast hall. "The delegation from Earth requests a recess to consider this development." The word hung in the air like a blade. Kim had chosen it carefully. Not decision or vote or motion, development. As if something had grown and changed, something that could not be undone. Admiral Park, Lee So-min, and young Choi Bin rose with their ambassador. Together, the human delegation walked from the chamber in complete silence. Behind them, hundreds of alien eyes watched their retreating forms. Kim did not look back. 300 years of trust had just died in this crystal hall. As the doors closed behind them, he wondered if anyone in that chamber truly understood what they had just done. The galaxy was about to find out. The human embassy's secure chamber felt smaller than usual as the delegation gathered around the polished conference table. The walls, lined with images of Earth's green hills and blue oceans, seemed to mock them now. Those beautiful worlds might soon be under council control if they accepted the demands. Kim Dae-ho sat at the head of the table, his hands pressed flat against the cool surface. The silence stretched for long minutes as each person processed what had just happened in the council chamber. 60% of our fleet, Admiral Park Ji-woo said finally, his voice tight with controlled anger. They want us to give up 60% of our ships. Ships that are currently protecting their trade routes and defending their colonies. Lee So-min pulled up holographic displays showing human contributions to the galaxy over the past 3 centuries. "Look at this data. Human medical teams have saved over 12 billion lives across 47 different worlds. Our agricultural technology feeds 600 million non-humans every day. Our engineers built the infrastructure that half the galaxy depends on." Young Choi Bin stared at the numbers floating in the air. "Why do they fear us? We've never attacked anyone who didn't attack first. We've never taken anything that wasn't freely given." The door chimed softly and Young Min-ki entered the room. The head of Human Intelligence Services was a thin man with tired eyes who rarely appeared at diplomatic functions. His presence here meant the situation was far worse than it appeared. "I've been monitoring council communications for the past 6 months, Jung said without greeting. This motion wasn't spontaneous. It was planned, carefully coordinated by a coalition of older species who see humanity as a threat to their power. He activated his own holographic display, showing a web of secret communications between various council members. The Zephyrians promised the Hive worlds exclusive trading rights in the Kepler sector, if they supported the motion. The Taylor Confederacy was offered human medical technology in exchange for their votes. Even the peaceful Meridians were pressured, though they refused. Admiral Park leaned forward. "How long have they been planning this?" "At least 2 years. Maybe longer." Jung's display shifted to show vote counts and probability calculations. They have enough support to pass any follow-up motions they want. Today was just the beginning. The door chimed again and Captain Yoon Hanul entered, still wearing her exploration suit. She had rushed here directly from her ship after receiving an emergency recall. Her vessel, the New Soul, had been mapping unexplored systems in the far reaches of space. "Sir," she said to Kim, "I need to report my recent findings before we make any decisions." Captain Yoon activated another holographic display. 3 star systems appeared, each containing multiple habitable worlds. "I've discovered these systems over the past month. They're completely uninhabited but perfect for human colonization. Rich in resources, stable stars, breathable atmospheres on 6 different planets." The room fell quiet as everyone studied the display. "There's more," Captain Yoon continued. "My science team has developed a new propulsion system based on quantum field manipulation. It's 3 times faster than anything the Council currently uses. We were planning to share this technology next week as a gift to celebrate our 300th year of membership." Lee So-min stood up abruptly. "They don't know about any of this. The new systems, the propulsion technology, our latest medical breakthroughs. We've been preparing to give them everything, and they've been preparing to take it by force." Another chime announced the arrival of Seo Yoonbi, the trade liaison. She looked exhausted and worried as she joined the group. "I've been analyzing the economic impact of this motion," she said, connecting her tablet to the room's display system. "If we comply with their demands, humanity will lose approximately 40% of our economic output. We'll be forced to abandon colonies that house 80 million people. But here's the interesting part. Her data showed trade flow charts and resource distribution maps. The species supporting this motion will gain control of resources worth trillions of credits. The Zephyrians alone will double their territory. It's not about fear or balance. It's about greed." Kim had heard enough. He stood and walked to the window overlooking the embassy gardens. Beyond the walls, the alien city of Nexus Prime sparkled under its twin suns. For 40 years, he had worked to build trust between humanity and the other species. Today, that work had been destroyed in a single vote. "Admiral Park," he said without turning around, "how long would it take to recall all human personnel and assets from Council space?" The Admiral was quiet for a moment, calculating. "Full withdrawal? If we started immediately and worked around the clock. 72 hours for military assets, maybe a week for all civilian personnel and equipment. And our defensive capabilities. Sir, if you're asking whether we could defend ourselves if they tried to take our colonies by force, yes, absolutely. Our technology is more advanced than they realize, and our people are better trained. But sir, you're talking about abandoning 3 centuries of cooperation." Kim turned back to face the room. "Cooperation requires 2 willing parties. Today, the Council made it clear that they want submission, not cooperation." Young Min-ki cleared his throat. "Sir, there's something else. Our intelligence suggests that some Council species are already planning to seize human colonies by force if we reject their demands. They believe we're too peaceful to fight back." The room erupted in angry voices. Admiral Park slammed his hand on the table. "Let them try. Our colonial defense forces aren't the ceremonial units they think they are." "That's exactly the problem," Lee So-min said. "They see our restraint as weakness. They see our generosity as something they can exploit." Kim raised his hand for silence. When the room was quiet, he spoke carefully. "For 300 years, humanity has served this council with absolute loyalty. We've bled for them, worked for them, shared our knowledge freely. We asked only for equal treatment and respect." He paused, looking at each person in the room. Today they made their choice. They chose fear over friendship, greed over gratitude. They believe they can take what we've freely given and force us to accept their terms. Young Choi Bin spoke up. "What are you saying, sir?" Kim's voice was steady and calm. "I'm saying that sometimes the only response to betrayal is to walk away. Send the recall codes, Admiral. All ships, all personnel, all assets. We're going home." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Admiral Park nodded. "Yes, sir. I'll begin immediately." As the others filed out to begin the massive task of withdrawal, Kim remained at the window. In the distance, Council ships moved through the sky, their crews unaware that everything was about to change. They had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The age of human service to the galaxy was ending. What came next would be entirely up to humanity itself. The recall codes went out at exactly midnight, Council Standard Time. Across 47 star systems, human personnel received the same simple message. Project Homecoming. Full withdrawal, 72 hours. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Commander Oh Tae-yang read the message 3 times before he believed it. His team of engineers had spent 15 years building the massive extraction facility that now provided rare metals to 12 different species. The complex employed thousands of aliens and had become the economic heart of the entire system. "Sir?" asked his second-in-command, watching O's face grow pale. "What are the orders?" "We're leaving," O said quietly. "All of us. Everything we can carry goes with us. Everything we can't carry gets shut down." Within 6 hours, human personnel across the facility began the careful process of withdrawal. Critical systems were powered down in sequence. Computer cores containing decades of research were removed and loaded onto transport ships. The massive fusion reactors that powered the operation were safely shut down, their fuel rods extracted and stored. The alien workers watched in growing confusion as their human supervisors systematically dismantled everything they had built together. When the facility's alien administrator demanded an explanation, O handed him a simple printed notice. "Earth hereby withdraws all personnel and assets from this facility, effective immediately. We thank you for your cooperation and wish you well." The same scene played out across the galaxy. On research stations, human scientists quietly packed their equipment and data. On military bases, human officers transferred command to local forces and began loading their ships. On trade stations, human merchants settled their accounts and prepared to leave. Dr. Nambora had worked at the Central Medical Station on Rigel Prime for 23 years. Her research into alien diseases had saved millions of lives and earned her respect from colleagues across dozens of species. When she began packing her laboratory, her assistant couldn't understand. "Doctor, your research into the Altarian fever could help billions of people. You can't just take it and leave." Nambora carefully sealed another container of samples. "I've dedicated my life to helping others, but I cannot help those who see my help as a threat to be eliminated." Her alien colleagues pleaded with her to stay. The hospital director offered her a permanent position with complete autonomy. The planetary government promised to protect her from any council interference. But Nambora had received her orders, and more importantly, she understood what they meant. Humanity was no longer welcome as equals in this galaxy. She would not stay to be treated as a servant or a threat. On the massive trade hub of Kepler Station, the withdrawal of human personnel created immediate chaos. Humans had managed 40% of all trade operations, handled most of the complex logistics, and maintained the station's critical systems. When they began leaving, the carefully balanced operation started falling apart. Station Commander Brix, a member of the Hive Worlds, frantically tried to convince the humans to stay. "You can't just leave. The station serves 37 different species. Millions depend on the trade that flows through here." Captain Lim Yu-jin, the senior human officer, handed Brix a data pad containing all the technical specifications and operational procedures. "Everything you need to continue operations is in there. We've trained local personnel to handle most functions. The rest you'll have to figure out yourselves. But the quantum communication array, the atmospheric processors, the gravity generators, they're all human technology. We don't understand how they work." "Then perhaps you should have thought of that before voting to restrict our capabilities." Lim replied calmly. "We're not your servants, Commander. We never were." The military withdrawal was even more dramatic. Admiral Park Ji-woo coordinated the movement of over 3,000 ships from their positions across the galaxy. Each vessel had been assigned to protect specific trade routes, defend vulnerable colonies, or patrol dangerous sectors. The withdrawal revealed just how extensive human military coverage had become. There was hardly a corner of council space that didn't have at least one human ship within a few hours' travel. The complex network of patrols, supply lines, and communication relays had taken decades to build and operated so smoothly that most aliens had forgotten it existed. On the frontier world of New Damascus, the local government panicked when they learned that the human patrol fleet was leaving. For 30 years, human ships had protected their system from pirate raids. Without that protection, the wealthy mining colonies would be defenseless. "You can't abandon us," pleaded Governor Thex, a member of the peaceful Meridian species. "Our people will die without your protection." Captain Han Sua, commander of the patrol squadron, felt genuine sadness as she prepared to leave. The Meridians had always been good allies, and their world was beautiful and peaceful. But orders were orders. "I'm sorry, Governor. This decision wasn't ours to make. The Council voted to restrict our military capabilities. We're simply complying with their wishes." But the pirates will come. They've been waiting for a chance like this. Then perhaps the council will send other ships to protect you, Han replied, though they both knew no other species had ships in this sector. As human vessels converged on rally points throughout the galaxy, other species began to realize the scope of what was happening. This wasn't a diplomatic protest or a negotiating tactic. Humanity was actually leaving. The council called emergency sessions, but no one seemed to know how to respond. The motion had been designed to force human submission, not to drive them away entirely. Several species began to panic as they realized how much they depended on human presence. Ambassador Kim Dae-ho spent his final day on Nexus Prime making formal visits to each embassy. He delivered withdrawal notices with the same ceremonial respect that humanity had shown for 3 centuries. Each document was personally signed and presented with dignity. Earth hereby formally withdraws from all treaties, agreements, and obligations with the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We thank you for the opportunity to serve and wish you well in your future endeavors. Some ambassadors tried to argue. Others offered last-minute compromises. A few even apologized for their votes and begged humanity to reconsider. Kim's response was always the same. The decision has been made. We respect the Council's wishes and will comply completely. On the final morning, Kim stood in his empty office overlooking the city. The human embassy had been packed and loaded onto transport ships. 3 centuries of accumulated art, literature, and scientific achievements were leaving with them. Young Choi Bin entered the office. "Sir, the last transport is ready." "It's time to go." Kim nodded and took one final look around the room where he had worked for 20 years. So many problems solved, so many crises averted, so many friendships built, all of it ending because fear had overcome wisdom. The human delegation walked through the embassy's empty halls toward the waiting shuttle. Their footsteps echoed in the silence, the only sound in a building that had once buzzed with activity. As their shuttle lifted off from Nexus Prime, Kim watched the planet fall away below them. In 72 hours, humanity had accomplished what many thought impossible: a complete, organized withdrawal from galactic civilization. They had left behind detailed instructions for maintaining the systems they had built. They had honored every contract and fulfilled every obligation. They had done everything with dignity and respect, but they had left. And as their ships jumped to hyperspace heading for Earth, the galaxy began to understand that humanity was truly gone. The silence they left behind was deafening. 6 months after humanity's departure, the first major crisis struck the Outer Rim territories. Pirates had always existed in the dangerous sectors beyond Council space, hiding in asteroid fields and dead systems. For decades, human patrol fleets had kept them contained, launching quick strikes whenever raiders became too bold. Without human ships, the pirates emerged like predators sensing weakness. The attack on the Altarian trade convoy was swift and brutal. 12 cargo ships loaded with medical supplies were destroyed, their crews killed or captured. The convoy's escorts, 3 Council patrol ships, were overwhelmed in minutes. The alien crews had trained for ceremonial duties and diplomatic missions, not real combat. Commander Veltar received the news while reviewing economic reports on his homeworld of Zephyros. The Zephyrian who had proposed humanity's restriction now faced the consequences of his success. Trade routes that had been safe for generations were becoming death traps. "How many ships did we lose this week?" Veltar asked his aide. 17 cargo vessels, sir, 5 passenger liners, 2 Council patrol ships." Veltar stared at the report, his pale blue skin darkening with stress. The pirates weren't just stealing cargo anymore. They were targeting infrastructure, destroying trade stations and communication relays. Without human forces to respond quickly, each attack encouraged 3 more. "What about the other species' fleets? Can't they patrol these sectors?" His aide looked uncomfortable. "Sir, most Council fleets are designed for system defense or ceremonial duties. The humans were the only ones with ships built for long-range patrol and rapid response. The economic impact hit harder than the military losses. On Zephyros itself, critical systems began failing one by one. The atmospheric processors that kept their cities breathable had been built using human engineering techniques. When they broke down, no one knew how to fix them. The planet's chief engineer, a competent being named Krixtal, stood helplessly before the massive machines that regulated their world's air supply. The human technical manuals were available, But they might as well have been written in an ancient dead language. The humans didn't just build these systems, Krixtal explained to the Planetary Council. They designed them from the ground up using principles we don't understand. Every component depends on technologies we never learned because we never needed to. The humans always handled it. Transportation networks across 12 worlds ground to a halt as fusion reactors designed by human engineers shut down without proper maintenance. Agricultural systems that fed billions failed as their complex computer controls became unstable. Even simple tasks became impossible when the underlying technology was beyond local understanding. The medical crisis proved even worse. On the world of Teleria Prime, Dr. Zenth faced a nightmare that haunted his dreams. The stellar plague had returned, mutated, and more deadly than before. The disease that human doctors had defeated 30 years ago was killing thousands every day. "Don't we have the cure?" demanded Governor Prex, watching infection rates climb toward catastrophic levels. "We have the original human antiviral compounds," Dr. Zenth replied. "But the plague has changed. The old medicine doesn't work anymore. We need to develop new treatments, but our understanding of viral genetics is decades behind human knowledge." Dr. Zenth had worked alongside human doctors during the original plague outbreak. He remembered their dedication, their willingness to risk infection while developing treatments. But he also remembered how much of their work he hadn't understood. The humans had shared their results freely, but the underlying science was far beyond most species' capabilities. "Can't we contact Earth? Ask for help?" "We've tried, sir. All communication channels to human space are blocked. They're not answering anyone." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The hive worlds watched their elaborate tunnel cities collapse as the support systems failed. The Meridians saw their beautiful floating gardens crash to the ground when the anti-grav generators stopped working. The Trade Federation's massive space elevators became death traps as their human-designed safety systems malfunctioned. Counselor Morix of the Trade Federation stood before the Council in emergency session, his voice shaking with barely controlled panic. 70% of interstellar commerce has stopped. The supply chains we depend on for basic survival are breaking down. Food shipments can't get through pirate raids. Medical supplies are trapped on worlds we can't reach safely. The Great Hall that had witnessed humanity's expulsion now echoed with desperate voices. Species that had voted confidently for human restrictions now faced the reality of what that meant. Perhaps we underestimated the extent of human involvement in our civilization, admitted Counselor Ixthek of the Hive Worlds. Her insectoid features twitched nervously as she spoke. "Our infrastructure analysis shows that human technology or expertise was involved in 86% of our critical systems." Elder Kethvar of the warrior clans rose slowly. The old soldier's honor had been offended by the original vote, but even he hadn't foreseen this level of catastrophe. "Warriors know the value of good allies," he said, his deep voice carrying across the chamber. "We drove away the best allies this galaxy has ever known. Now we face the consequences of that choice." Intelligence reports painted an even grimmer picture. Young Minki's Human Intelligence Network had been the Council's primary source of information about threats from unknown space. Without it, they were blind to dangers from unexplored sectors. "Unknown ships have been detected at the edge of our territory," reported the Council's new intelligence chief. "A nervous being named Vextron. We don't know who they are or what they want. The human early warning network that would have detected them months ago no longer exists." "What about our own intelligence services?" asked a delegate. "Sir, most of our intelligence came from human sources. We had networks, but they were supplementary to human operations. We never realized how much we depended on their information. The most chilling discovery came from historical analysis. Council archives revealed that in every major crisis over the past century, human solutions had been the decisive factor. Plague outbreaks, pirate wars, trade disputes, border conflicts. Humanity had been the galaxy's problem solvers. Dr. Bracton, the Council's chief researcher, presented his findings to increasingly desperate leaders. In 47 separate crises, human intervention was what prevented catastrophic loss of life. They didn't just contribute to solutions, they were the solutions. "You're saying we're helpless without them?" Feltar asked, his voice hollow. "I'm saying we built our entire civilization on the assumption that humans would always be there to solve our problems. We never developed our own capabilities because we never needed to. Meanwhile, disturbing reports arrived from the frontier regions. Human space had become completely sealed off from the rest of the galaxy. Ships that approached human systems encountered defensive technologies that no one recognized, energy barriers that could stop entire fleets, weapons platforms that appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. Captain Raxtor of the Exploration Service had tried to make contact with a human colony near the border. His ship had been stopped by invisible forces at the edge of the system and held motionless while a calm human voice delivered a simple message. "This system is under human protection. Your presence is not welcome. Please depart immediately." "We came to negotiate," Raxtor had replied. "The Council wants to discuss terms for renewed cooperation." "The time for discussion has passed. Depart now or be removed." Raxtor's ship had been released and gently pushed away from the system by forces he couldn't detect or understand. The humans had let him go unharmed, but the message was clear. They were no longer interested in Council contact. As the months passed and the crises multiplied, a terrible truth became clear to the Council leadership. They hadn't just lost humanity's cooperation, they had lost the foundation that their entire civilization rested upon. The galaxy was collapsing, and the beings who might have saved it were gone. They had gotten exactly what they asked for, a galaxy without human influence. Now they were learning what that really meant. The silence from human space grew more ominous each day, not because of what it threatened, but because of what it represented. Indifference. Humanity had moved on. The galaxy they left behind was discovering that it couldn't. 2 years after the withdrawal, a massive diplomatic fleet approached Earth's solar system. The ships represented every major species in the Council, their hulls gleaming with ceremonial decorations and peace symbols. This was the galaxy's last hope for reconciliation. Ambassador Veltar sat in the lead ship's conference room, staring at intelligence reports that seemed impossible to believe. The Zephyrian who had orchestrated humanity's expulsion now looked decades older, his pale blue skin marked with stress lines and his once confident demeanor replaced by desperate hope. "Are these readings accurate?" he asked the fleet's science officer. "Yes, sir. Human space is completely sealed by defensive technologies we can't identify. Energy signatures suggest industrial capacity at least 10 times larger than our projections. Population estimates indicate massive growth, but we can't determine how many humans now exist." Elder Kethvar of the warrior clans studied tactical displays showing humanity's new borders. "These defenses would stop any fleet we could assemble. They're not trying to threaten us. They're making it clear that we can't threaten them." The fleet's approach to Earth was carefully monitored from the moment they entered the outer solar system. Defensive platforms appeared and disappeared like ghosts, always watching but never directly challenging. It was a demonstration of power that needed no words. As they drew closer to Earth, the diplomatic fleet witnessed something that shook them to their core. The solar system had been transformed into a fortress and industrial complex of staggering scale. Massive orbital habitats surrounded Earth like jeweled rings. Asteroid mining operations stretched across the entire system. Shipyards the size of small moons produced vessels of elegant but unknown design. "How many people live here now?" whispered Counselor Morix, watching the displays in amazement. "Estimates suggest 12 billion humans in this system alone," replied the science officer. "That's triple Earth's original population. They must have recalled every human from across the galaxy and far beyond." President Kang Min-ho received the diplomatic fleet in the gleaming capital city of New Geneva. The hall where they met was beautiful, but alien to Council eyes. Designed according to purely human aesthetics with no consideration for other species' comfort. The message was subtle but clear. This was human space now. The president was a younger man than the ambassadors expected, perhaps 50 years old, with calm gray eyes and an expression that revealed nothing. He listened politely as Veltar presented the Council's formal apologies and desperate pleas for renewed cooperation. "We acknowledge that Motion 847 Delta was a grave error in judgment," Veltar said, his voice carrying the weight of a dying civilization. "The galaxy is suffering without human participation. Billions have died from plagues we cannot cure, pirate attacks we cannot stop, and system failures we cannot repair." President Kang's expression never changed. "You have our sympathy for your losses." "Please," Counselor Ixthek interrupted. her insectoid features twitching with stress. Name any terms you want, any reparations, any concessions. Our people are dying. Entire worlds are becoming uninhabitable without human technology. That is unfortunate, the president replied calmly, but it is not our responsibility. Admiral Bei Yuri, the head of Seoul Defense Command, activated a holographic display showing the current state of human civilization. The assembled aliens stared in shock at the scope of what they saw. 74 star systems now house human populations, she explained with professional detachment. Our industrial output has increased by 400% since withdrawing from Council obligations. We have established diplomatic relations with 17 non-Council species and formed mutually beneficial alliances based on respect and equality. The display showed sleek, human ships exploring unknown regions of space, massive construction projects on distant worlds, and thriving colonies in systems the Council had never heard of. In 2 years, humanity had not only survived without the galaxy, they had flourished. You've contacted other species? Elder Kethavar asked, his warrior's pride stung by the implications. Of course, Admiral Bei replied. The galaxy is vast, and the Council represents only a small portion of intelligent life. We've found the universe to be full of beings interested in honest cooperation rather than dominance games. Chief Negotiator Shin Woo-jin stepped forward, carrying a datapad that contained humanity's final answer to the Council's pleas. His voice was respectful but firm as he delivered words that would echo across the galaxy. The Galactic Council chose to see humanity as a threat rather than an ally. You demanded submission instead of seeking partnership. You took our loyalty for granted and our sacrifices as your due. When we offered cooperation, you insisted on control. He paused, letting the words sink in. The human species has learned a valuable lesson from this experience. We no longer need your approval, your permission, or your participation. We have found our own path among the stars. Veltar's voice cracked as he made one final plea. But what about the billions who are dying? Surely human compassion demands that you help them. President Kang stood slowly, his calm demeanor never wavering. Human compassion led us to serve the Council faithfully for 3 centuries. We bled for your worlds, shared our knowledge freely, and asked only for equal treatment. Your response was to demand our submission. He walked to a massive window overlooking the bustling city below. Humans moved through the streets with purpose and confidence, their faces showing none of the fear or desperation that marked the alien delegation. The galaxy made its choice. President Kang continued. You chose fear over friendship, control over cooperation, dominance over partnership. Those choices have consequences. So you'll just let civilizations collapse? Councillor Morix asked, his voice filled with horror. We're not letting anything happen, the president replied. We're simply no longer preventing it. For 300 years, humanity served as the galaxy's problem solvers, defenders, and caretakers. We never asked for that role, but we fulfilled it with dedication. Now you must learn to solve your own problems. The alien delegation sat in stunned silence as the full weight of humanity's decision became clear. This wasn't anger or revenge, it was complete indifference. Humanity had moved beyond needing the galaxy's approval or fearing its disapproval. As the meeting concluded, Shin Woo-jin handed Veltar a final document. This contains our formal response to your request. You're welcome to study it on your journey home. The document was simple. Request denied. As the diplomatic fleet prepared to leave Earth's solar system, they passed through the defensive perimeter that protected human space. The technology that monitored their passage was beyond anything the Council possessed, yet it treated them with casual indifference rather than hostility. They could have destroyed us easily, Admiral Kethavar observed as they cleared the boundary, but they simply don't care enough to bother. The journey home took 3 weeks. During that time, the delegates studied reports of continued galactic collapse. More worlds fell to pirates. More plague outbreaks claimed millions of lives. More critical systems failed without human expertise to maintain them. But perhaps the most disturbing news came from the frontier regions. Human exploration fleets had been spotted in sectors far beyond Council space, establishing colonies and making contact with unknown species. Humanity was expanding rapidly, but in directions that had nothing to do with their former neighbors. They're building a new civilization, Veltar realized as he read the reports. Not just surviving without us, but thriving. They've found new allies, new worlds, new purposes. We're not just rejected, we're irrelevant. When the diplomatic fleet returned to Nexus Prime, they found a galaxy in chaos. The council chambers were half empty as species struggled with local crises. Trade had collapsed to a fraction of former levels. Communication networks were failing as relay stations shut down without maintenance. Veltar stood before the remaining delegates and delivered humanity's answer in a voice hollow with defeat. They said no, not with anger or conditions or demands for apologies, just no. They've moved on. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of beings from across the galaxy confronting a terrible truth. They had driven away the best thing that had ever happened to them. In the months that followed, some species managed to adapt. A few developed their own solutions to the problems humanity had once solved. Many others simply faded away, their civilizations collapsing under the weight of challenges they couldn't handle alone. The galaxy learned to function without human protection, human innovation, and human compassion. It was a smaller, poorer, more dangerous place. But it was what they had chosen. Meanwhile, in human space, President Kang stood again at his office window, watching ships depart for new worlds and new adventures. His aide, Park Subin, approached with the daily reports. Sir, long-range sensors have detected 3 more species interested in establishing diplomatic contact. They're from the Andromeda region, completely outside council space. What do they offer? Mutual respect, shared exploration, and honest trade partnerships. No demands for submission or control. President Kang smiled for the first time in years. Then let's talk to them. It's time to discover what the universe offers when we're free to explore it as equals.